Hi everyone, I'm Katherine Scarrow and welcome to Shop Talk, a panel discussion hosted by the Globe and Mail's Content Studio in partnership with Purolator. This edition is all about B2B e-commerce, and I'm joined today by some very bright people. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Lake. I'm the co-founder and COO of a company called Bridgit. We're a construction software company, and we do workforce planning, so being able to help large contractors plan their people and their projects and make sure that they have all of that sorted out.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jane Lee, and I'm the co-founder of LaunchPop. We're a venture studio, and we're based in LA and Toronto. What we do is we launch direct-to-consumer brands.
I am Stacey Cummings. I am with Purolator on the marketing team. And if you don't know who Purolator is, I probably am not doing my job very well, but we're a 60-year-old Canadian courier company.
I'm Randy Frisch. I'm the CMO and one of the co-founders at a company called Uberflip. We are a content experience platform, and what that means is we help companies take all the content that they're creating and actually get it in front of their audiences in a more personalized way.
Okay, I'd like to kick things off by throwing some big numbers at you. So, new reports suggest that global B2B e-commerce is expected to grow to about 6.6 trillion US by 2021. So it's growing, it's big, it's happening. Yet nearly half of Canadian small businesses and mid-sized businesses either don't have a website or have very minimal e-commerce functionality. So when you hear that, does that surprise you? What are your thoughts?
Like building a website or having an online presence is kind of like going to a mechanic if you don't know anything about your car, right? You're not sure what people are going to recommend to you. Am I getting the right service for this? How do I even get started? I think there's a lot of questions there that if it's not your core competence, that it's very difficult to make that leap.
Yeah, and I would also say that I think you have to look at the ecosystem, not just the small businesses, but the infrastructure around them. So one is like investors. Are investors willing to actually invest in companies? Because starting a whole like online business part of your business means an investment, right? Whether that's a new supply chain, tech, a marketing team that can do online marketing. So at that point, you need an investment, and are investors willing to invest in companies that are shipping physical products in Canada? Not as much as other countries. That's what I've noticed, at least. And so really looking at not only the small businesses, but everything around it is really important to understand why I think there isn't that switch as much as other countries.
Right. What I'd like to do now is go through some of those really common objections or barriers that businesses are feeling, and I'm hoping you guys can maybe counteract those or maybe demystify them for businesses. So this is one you often hear. So basically, I have a traditional business. My customers, they're not buying online. They rely on the phone, fax, or email to place orders. Would you say that's still a valid objection?
Facts, huh?
Does somebody use a fax?
Yeah,
still?
like,
I can't
some
believe
people
that.
still
I
use
just
fax
skipped that whole, I feel like I just got to skip the facts, right? and I'm over 40 and I got to skip it. So I don't know how many people are. I don't know. I think it, you hear that statement and I build off what Stacey was saying, where I think that that split of maybe the 50% who are invested in the 50% who aren't, it kind of depends on growth and growth mindset. Do they want to grow? And I think a lot of the times we think of small business in a very positive way these days. It's small business is about growing to be mid-sized business and eventually enterprise if you're so lucky. But there are a lot of traditional businesses, as you touched on, that have just been around for decades, and I think those are the ones with the hesitation and the fear and the I don't know where to start about going online. And I think those are the ones that, to be honest, I forget about, because I'm usually looking for the up and coming businesses, the ones that are growing, the ones that are entrepreneurial, and whether that's something that I'm buying on Etsy or something that I'm buying on Amazon, that's just where my mind goes, that I'm going to find the up and comers there.
No, it's funny because my husband runs a small business, and he was saying, no, we don't need a website. We've got organic growth that is as much as we can handle. If you can't scale to grow, then you don't necessarily need that. But I finally convinced him to have a website because it's great for recruitment. So there's other things that you can do with an online presence that doesn't necessarily mean that transaction.
Right.
That's still really important, and I think there's simple ways that we as a community can help small businesses in Canada realize that, and there's lots of services out there that help small businesses do simple things to get online that helps their business holistically, not just the growth aspect.
Yeah, and I would also say that if you do have a website, the great thing about going online is you get data. And I know that data can be scary for a lot of people who are more like, traditional, et cetera. But with that, you can learn more about your customer. You can understand who your customer is exactly. And a lot of people are surprised because the offline customer and the fax customer is very different than the person who would purchase online. And that's a whole new channel. That's a whole new customer that you haven't discovered. And so I think looking at online positively and looking at collecting data about your customer positively should be something that smaller business owners should be educated on, because I think that's still not kind of something people know of yet.
Another challenge that B2B companies face is that they don't want to post their prices online. That's a very common objection. Their pricing's competitive, or they say my pricing is very complicated. If I go online, I feel like there's an expectation around that.
When we started our business, we were selling more to small businesses. So we were a business selling to other small businesses, very low cost of our offering. This is 7+ years ago. And to do that, it made sense for us to have an online presence and a transactional approach to how we sell. As we went more upmarket, selling kind of to mid-market enterprise organizations, there's a shift that needs to happen there. So even though we're a small business, we needed to get to the point where we could support this same more complex buying approach, buyer journey, as we often call it internally, and understanding that everyone's a little bit different and we just have to be there with the right answers at the right time.
So you evolved and you pivoted and shifted, but you were still online that whole time.
Absolutely. I mean, the idea of being online, I think it's a big misconception with some business owners, is that to be online, I have to be selling something or I have to have our pricing there or something of the sort. I think a big trend that we'll see on websites in general in the next, years, could be as little as the next 2 years to 10 years, we'll see more and more, is that websites will lead more with content and thought leadership than they will with product and pricing. Right? We don't go to buy a product right away. We go to aspire to be part of the brand, to be part of what they stand for. And the more that company can help answer me, the more, I build affinity towards them long term. So to your earlier point with those laggards who aren't, getting on there because they say we've got it all done, even if they have a full book of business right now, imagine just amplifying how great their business is, and then being able to drive up their own price to their customer base.
But look, all that content, that great content, that seems like a lot of work. It seems expensive. And this brings me to my next objection. It's too much work to onboard everyone on my team. It requires far too much of an investment to kind of prioritize online and integrate potentially e-commerce into my company, my business. So how do we get over that?
I feel like it's just like any change where a lot of it is just getting your mindset around the change, and it won't happen overnight, and kind of taking that almost to be like out of the picture. It doesn't need to go from 0 to 100 in one, shot. So I think almost just breaking it down into smaller pieces and saying, okay, first we're just going to get, a really basic website up, and then we're going to slowly add content to it, or maybe we won't even bother with that initially, and just like piecemeal, kind of adding bit by bit, so it's a little bit less overwhelming. And then you can start to see, do we which pieces of this do we really care about? Where do we want to invest? And you don't need to do it all. And you could, do that slowly over, a year, longer, or you could, maybe you see within the first couple months that it's really helping your business, and then you invest more. So I think it doesn't need to be like an all or nothing.
But what about the objection of e-commerce? It doesn't build the relationships, those in-person relationships that's how my sales team sells. It's through the people. How do you grapple with the fact that online can seem a bit impersonal in some ways?
For my business, a lot of people discover us via word of mouth, and they go onto our website, and then, there's a form that actually you have to fill out in order to get to one of our salespeople, because that actually reduces the amount of people who are just kind of like doing it for spam, or vets people out a lot, and then they go through our sales team. So like it doesn't mean that you have to actually make it purely online. You know, that's the first touch point for the customer. And then the next touch point could be someone. So you could get that kind of like personalized kind of introduction to the company through an actual person. So you can do a mixture of both, whatever works for your company. You just have to test things out and figure out what works best in terms of your sales funnel.
You guys have done a very good job of showing me the benefits of e-commerce. Have we missed any here that you want to talk about?
The idea of selling beyond our postal code not too long ago was crazy, because just the logistics of getting it there and everything around that. And now there's this global audience that you have, which takes away so many limits of the scale of your company.
So I do want to talk a little bit about how you would select the right carrier to work with and what factors you're looking for when you engage with a delivery partner.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll start by saying we don't actually ship our product online. In our case, we're a software company, so our product is online itself. But it's interesting how traditional tactile marketing, direct mail even, is making a big comeback in some ways. And there's this term account-based marketing, which a lot of small businesses can benefit from the idea, I know who I want to sell to. These are the accounts I want to sell to. I'm going to go sell to them, and I'm going to really personalize to that level. And one of the tactics we use is sending a very personalized direct mail package to kind of win them over. It could have some sort of swag, some sort of present, essentially a bribe to pay attention to us right now. We're legit and we know you. And within that, there's a lot of considerations that we look at in choosing a vendor and what they're using from a shipping perspective. So we want to know the moment they get that, right? Because that is an opportunity for our sales team to get back involved and say, all right, what'd you think? Like, did we nail that gift that we sent to you? There's other aspects that you get into from a technology perspective, like a CRM, like a Salesforce.com. Can we get that information to flow in there so that we can create workflows to notify? So there's all these ways that we can use, even if our product, again, is not something that we're shipping, that we can get the attention of people, because I truly believe the idea of getting a box today has gotten exciting again.
Totally.
Customer service is a big part of who we are as a brand. So if you call someone, we want to make sure we can resolve your problem quickly. That trust is so important. And for us, it's always, we want to say exactly what we are going to do and when, and live by that. And I think that's really the biggest connector for us, is earning the trust of who we work with.
I want to talk just a little bit about us maybe as consumers for a moment, because something that's also kind of become a big issue for businesses is the term shopping cart abandonment. So we get to, think about yourself purchasing something online, and you reach that final stage. And I think we've all been there, where we just decide, no, it's not for me. I'm not going to engage in that next step. And maybe either from the perspective of a consumer or business, how do you overcome that challenge? And what is it sometimes that causes us to leave that product hanging in the shopping cart?
I'm now have been trained to do that, to wait, because 9 times out of 10, someone will send you a pricing offer.
Totally. All my founders do the same
Foodora,
thing.
the Foodora and the Uber Eats,
it's so true.
they will incentivize me to order that food. So I'll just do it 30 minutes earlier and be like, I need a promo code out of this thing.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. The other big thing for me, though, is shipping time. Like, that's my number one job abandonment. Or job
You get to that last
Time
window.
or price? Time or price?
I'd say time and price. But like, I don't expect to pay anymore. I expect it just to be.
You expect free shipping.
I expect free shipping.
Minimum order spend?
I like live in a prime world. I'm just, I expect free shipping, and I expect to be able to get it in 2 days almost. Like pretty much all the time. And to be honest, I mean, I know we're talking B2B and we're talking consumer, but I think we're silly to think that should change, because I'm the same person who's buying a new dog bowl and expecting it to come overnight as I am the person buying new laptops for my team, right?
Yep.
And or some sort of new function for our kitchen at our office. I mean, all those things, to me, the alternative is sending someone out to go get it. Right. And if it starts to take more than 2 days, our business probably needs that item in that moment. So I think that that expectation or that line that, oh, well, that's consumer, we're a business, just doesn't cut it.
It's blurred now.
Yeah.
So you expect to get the, say, 100 laptops in the same time and fee for that toothbrush that you ordered.
Within reason, yeah. I mean, what was Dell's line was like just in time back in the day, like university classes, which I think that just in time was like weeks. Now, if I'm building something custom, yeah, I expect it a little bit longer. But if it's something that is promoted as their product, as something that they always offer, I expect I should be able to get it in a couple of days.
I think to Randy's point, though, we sure have seen with our B2B customers specifically, speed is of the essence. It's they're looking for a part that is holding up process, that they can't sit idle for 2 days waiting for a shipment to come in. It has to be there right away or they're losing productivity in their business. I think
Right.
businesses that sell to businesses feel that pressure for speed almost more than price.
Okay, so we're seeing the B2B world and the B2C world sort of blurring and combining, or at least influencing each other. But when it comes to, say, marketing and promotion and how you promote a business online to businesses as opposed to consumers, there are some pretty clear differences. Would you agree or not?
I do think it starts to get delineated the larger the business that you are marketing to. So we market to businesses of all sizes. Small business marketing strategy is very different than my large. And that's just because of the number of people that are involved in the decision-making process in large businesses. It's decision by committee. Versus single or dual owner decision making capability. So in that case, as you get to the larger business, it's a much larger, longer process, more people and more content that you have to create to appeal to different decision makers. You have someone from procurement, someone from finance, someone from marketing. Often the CEO is involved in some way. So you know that you have to kind of position your message in many different ways to show financial viability, reliability, and appeal, and not only meet the need of the customer, but meet the needs of all the decision makers as well. So in that case, my strategy is different than a quicker decision-making cycle, which can happen in smaller businesses or consumers. Consumers I have regret, I didn't buy it. I can be retargeted and buy something. Businesses often work a little differently than that. They're not the impulse buyers that we see in consumers. So from that perspective, it's different.
Right, okay.
I think a lot of what Stacey hit on is dead on there. I mean, you go from a smaller buying group to a larger buying group. There's a great stat. Used to be a group called CB, now part of Gartner, so like one of these big think tanks, and they would track how many people were in the buying committee each year. And it just keeps going up. It's out of control. Last I heard, it's like nine different people that you may have to touch during that buyer journey. And that's where, the big part that's changed for us is the type of messaging and type of content that we serve people towards. We used to just, rely on SEO, and we used to rely on that people would find us and that they would then go to our website and they'd go through that navigation menu and figure out what was right for them, right? And we've all been there. We expect someone's going to go there, go to the menu, and if it's content, they would, go down to white papers. But when's the last time any of us went to a website and we're like, let's figure out what this guy does by white papers? It's just not how our minds work. We say, I have a problem, or my company is at this stage of the buyer journey. And the reality is, we were talking about earlier about data, we can understand where that company is in the buying cycle. We can leverage those insights and start to customize the content that we deliver based on everything that we know. So we can map the salesperson right back in, because we all know how frustrating that is when you call and they don't know that you're already working with someone, and you got to be transferred more than once. I mean, that's frustration to me.
I did want to talk about social a little bit. Jane, we were earlier talking about some of the direct-to-consumer brands you consult with and you work with, and a lot of them depend on social to get the word out. It's very different from the sounds of it. This isn't a tactic that B2Bs engage with as much, or it doesn't drive the same results necessarily than it does, say, in the consumer space. Would you agree with that?
I think the strategies for B2B and B2C is actually the same, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's just the tactics that are different. So case studies, obviously I give case studies to my clients to see hey, this is what we launched. In a direct-to-consumer brand, that's just reviews. right? Reviews that you see on a website.
Okay.
Content. We obviously need content that's really sophisticated for like marketers or at big companies or founders, but so do direct-to-consumer brands. They need content as well. And so things are just done differently, but I think the tactics in terms of like the different ways to market your company is the same. B2B or B2C, in my opinion. But to your point about like social media and paid acquisition, I don't know, I have mixed feelings about like Facebook ads just because like I compare Facebook ads to like morphine in some ways. Like I think like people do it because it like feels good, but people get addicted to it. And a lot of the times, you know, all these direct to consumer brands, they have investors and investors will ask you like, what's your CAC? Right? And then the founders will be like, oh, that means that I have to have Facebook ads as one of my biggest kind of drivers for my sales. And so they'll just pour money into Facebook ads and then that will drive a lot of sales. But once you take it away, your sales drops tremendously. And that's a very unhealthy and unsustainable way to grow as a direct-to-consumer brand, right? And so I think that like it's important, paid acquisition is important, but growing in a sustainable way and focusing more on retention is way more important, which I can say is the same for B2B as well. Like it's important to acquire those customers, but to keep them on as your client is way more important because that's consistent revenue over time, right?
Right. If you could give some advice to a company, I know you're a consultant, so you may run across some of these issues. What's something that you see and you just would offer some advice? It's a mistake that businesses make and it could easily be remedied. Am I going to stump you guys on that?
I'll throw in. I think let's talk around the area of content because I think all businesses understand that they should be creating content to build a more meaningful long-term relationship with their audience, whether it's someone who's a prospective customer or someone who's a long-term customer that we're trying to retain, as you said earlier. We get overwhelmed with where's that content going to live. And as a result, we get people on our site to buy from us. And if we're using the e-commerce buy on our site example, then we send people off of our site to find our content, right? So one of the things that we'll do is we'll send them to Facebook to buy our content, to find content. We'll send them to YouTube to watch a video. So all these things that we're doing where we spent so much money to acquire that person's attention, and now we have it, they're on our www.com domain. And then all of a sudden we're like, okay, go look up here in the top corner. Here's our Facebook button, Instagram button, etc. And we all of a sudden lose them. And the problem with all those channels, we know them, is like you watch a YouTube video and like 3 later, you're watching Dora the Explorer or something, and wondering what your kids are on your account doing. But the reality is that when we have all that content on our site and we start to mingle it with our product, then it becomes a much more natural buyer journey, as we said. You'll consume some content, whether it's video or white paper or blog or a combination of all of them, and you can more so introduce products at the right time during that process.
Okay, that's a good one.
In our space, because we're a software company as well, so we're not selling like a physical product online. But when I look at other businesses like ours, I feel like quite often it's hard to actually understand from their website what the company actually does. And it's
Messaging, okay.
and it's easier said than done to make a website that's actually clear to someone who's new to it. And we've had that problem even with our own website. It's like a fine line. It's great when the website is, aspirational and it talks a lot about the kind of like that bigger goal of the company and drawing people into that. But then you also still have to communicate like what is the actual thing you're selling today.
It's actually harder to communicate clearly and succinctly than it is to be verbose and go on, right? So it does take a certain discipline. So it's a very good one.
I think for me, it's my pet peeve is probably when you're asking me for too much information. It's like I can give you the basics, but if you need to know other things or you want to know them, I don't want to tell you. Like I don't want to give you too much information. I just want what I've ordered and just let me do the transaction and leave the website. I think that's my pet peeve is too many fields of data to have to enter.
Okay.
Talk to your customers. Like they're right there, talk to them. Because to your point, you need to do user research about your brand, about your website. And you have to understand because you as a founder and you as a business owner, you're biased in so many ways. You know the product, it's right in front of you. You created it, right? But you need to understand what other people think about it. And you'll be so surprised after you do your research how differently people perceive your brand or your product or your copy. So I would say talk to your customers, not just only send them a survey. Like go out there
Like
in
in
the
person?
field.
Like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
actually- oh,
go
God,
out
no.
there and talk to them. I think
terrifying.
people are scared of that. I tell all my founders, I tell them every single day, call 3 customers and just talk to them. And you know what's crazy? People love talking to founders. They just want to talk all the time. They're like, oh my God, you're the founder of the company that I just bought something from. Can I tell you X, Y, Z? And they just go on and on and on. And so it's like, it's a very unscalable way to do things, but it keeps you close to the front line, which is so important in all businesses, whether it's B2B or B2C.
Okay, everyone, that's all the time we have for our discussion. Thank you so much for being here today. That was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. That was awesome.